And get started here. There's the recording, so we can save this for everybody else. So once again, thanks for being here today. I don't think this will take anywhere near 3 hours, but I often think those things, and then you guys prove me wrong with your questions. So, but we'll see what happens. So we'll hopefully give you some time back in your day today, and otherwise, hopefully we answer a lot of your questions as we move forward. I have a whole list of things here that I'm supposed to do. Yeah, so that most of you might have seen the email that it went out this morning with the draft slide deck that we're going to use, and me apologizing for those of you that were at the NSCAS meeting when I don't even know what I did because I don't remember much of that, except you guys made me go back to bed. So because I'm not apparently making a lot of sense, which I don't know, maybe that's pretty typical. So thank you for taking care of me and making sure that I got some sleep and some rest. I am feeling much better, except that when I look at my email and the amount of work that I need to catch up on, I am overwhelmed once again on a constant basis. So thank you for your well wishes, and I will get back to those of you that I have emails waiting for me. And as I said in the email, if you're needing something immediately, let me know, and I will try to get that done as fast as I can. Special report information. I know people are going to ask about where we are with last year's data, so I'll go ahead and just tackle that right away. We keep partly because I was ill, pushing things back because we're trying to provide that support material to you. So I just met with Lane. He's going to do some double checking, but I think I'm going to have some movement and information for you first thing tomorrow is what I'm hoping to have. So that just happened like literally 10 minutes ago. So stay tuned to that. Otherwise, I don't have a lot of information. I know that many of you are waiting to do ISR stuff because of parent-teacher conferences or stuffing letters or whatever the case may be. So I am hoping to have movement on that front and information on that front about the updated timeline for you tomorrow about that. I was going to do a Pepsi challenge today just to have something fun to do, see who could guess the right amount of fluid ounces I've had in the last 24 hours, but I think we'll just go ahead and skip that, mostly because I don't remember either, so it wouldn't be very fair contest anyway. Like I said, I don't think this is going to take all the way till noon. We'll kind of play it by ear. If we are in the middle of things and it looks like it's going to take a lot longer, then we might take a break at. Otherwise, I'll just keep an eye on the clock and see where we are with information. So Trudy will keep an eye on the chat for me. If she thinks there's a time that I need to stop and answer questions, she'll let me know. I'm very bad at that. If I watch chat, I interrupt myself with the questions. So I'm going to try to ignore those things as we move forward. As just kind of a reminder what today's all about. It's about NSCAS growth, and it's really policy level pieces for the most part, right? I'm not getting into details of how to do this or how to do that. It's really as we're moving forward, both with the winter pilot and with spring, kind of giving out high level information and then trying to answer questions about those types of things and where we are. So that's kind of where we are. We'll go ahead and just get started. Thanks again for being here. So there are contacts again. I didn't put all the information in for the assessment staff. And just as a reminder, this is the first of 3 fall webinars that we're doing about different topics. The NSCAS growth, the next one's about NSCAS ACT, and then the last one will be a little bit of everything, whatever's left that we need to kind of cover and give additional details. all of these feel like they're going to be shorter than the time frame that we kind of carved out originally, which is, I think, good for all of us. I won't tell anybody if you keep it on your schedule for the entire time. If you don't tell, I'll do the same. So there we go. So here we go. Just as a reminder, when I'm talking about NSCAS growth, I'm talking about grades 3 through 8 and talking specifically about ELA and mathematics. As you know, the winter pilot, December 1st through January 28th. As a reminder, we're expecting all students in those grades that would normally take NSCAS summative, the general, to take either ELA or mathematics, and we've made that a district choice. You don't have to tell us which one you're doing, you just do it. Okay, so you don't have to say, hey, we're going to do ELA, or we're going to do math, or we're going to do both. If that's the case, you just go ahead and do it, and we'll keep an eye on things as we move forward during that pilot time. Makeup testing during the winter pilot is optional, right? So if you don't need the data and you had a student gone during your testing, the scheduled testing time, you don't need to necessarily go back and test that student. It's up to you about how you're doing things. If you're doing map growth as well during that time and you have the data you need for that student from map growth, or if the student is just fine academically and you don't need that data in general, you don't have to necessarily go do makeup testing. Now, if you in your district want to say, no, we're going to test every student, that's up to you, right? So, but from our perspective, we'll have plenty of data if we just count on everybody doing their best and then making the best decision about whether they need to do the makeup testing or not. So nobody is going to, at the state level, is coming to say, hey, you didn't test all of the kids, these few kids didn't get tested, and that type of thing. So it's really optional as far as makeup testing goes, and trying to make those up during that window and everything. Not tested codes are also optional, and I'll get into this a little bit later. We want some of you to use the not tested code and the codes and the not tested functions, at least on some of your students, to be able to give us feedback. I'll provide a little bit more information about the not tested codes and how they're different in the new system. But once again, they're optional. So nobody needs to stress out and freak out that they don't have everything done by the end of this January 28th window. The pilot is not being used for reporting or accountability, so there's no repercussions if there's not tested codes. If there's not tested codes, if you fail to do the not tested codes, there's no repercussions. And so don't worry about it if you don't do that. One of the biggest things that I'd say is, if you've decided as a district that you're going to be doing ELA, you don't need to go put not tested codes in for all of math, right? There's no necessity to tell us the not tested codes on the other contents that you're doing. And really, we just want you to do it for practice and those types of things. And I'll come back around to that. I have some slides later on about not tested codes as well. For the NSCAS operational in the spring, right? The expectations is that that's statewide summative testing, right? Essentially. And so the window is very similar, obviously, as previous year, 6 weeks and then a week makeup, and all students would need to complete that assessment, right? Those for both content areas, both ELA and for math. So we get those summative scores. Just for clarity. You've seen this many times, this information again. Every time a student takes NSCAS growth, they'll get the RIT scores, including national normed information. They'll get grade level item information, current proficiency level or achievement level information, and then we'll produce, in spring, we'll produce the summative determinations for proficiency as well. That information should be available within 72 hours for the winter pilot and for spring, or quicker. But the ultimate goal is to have those within 24 hours as we move into next year. Um, so in addition, these are the types of reporting that you're going to get for NSCAS growth. There's a lot of item level information in the system, and then integrated levels to kind of go into each of those levels, the school level, the aggregated up and down, right? It's interesting. So a lot of people keep asking about what do reports look like, and I've been struggling with that question a little bit to say, well, here's the report, right? Part of that is because the new system is different, and it's more dynamic. As you pull information or as information comes in, you can look at it in different ways and then be able to grab that information and pull it out of the system or take a look at those reports. And so there's also filters in the system for you to look at it from different views. And so in that way, there isn't a lot of the reporting isn't necessarily a static report like some of the map growth things would have been. It's more you deciding things, what you want to look at and the view you want to look at any given point in time. One thing that I want to be clear about, because this is a concern that I've had as I've been looking at those reporting pieces and everything, and some of you have been in the systems and looking at a lot of the information we put out there, is that everything feels way more summative than it's supposed to feel at the beginning, right? So when there's no other data in the system, it feels more summative than growth or interim based, because there's not other data points in the system to look at. So that's something to think about as you're looking at data from this winter and then data in the spring again, is that it's going to feel more summative because there's only the one data point in time for individual students. As that starts to populate as we move forward, it will feel more growth related. At least that's what everybody's telling me on the other on NWA side as I'm looking at it and giving my own feedback and listening to feedback of others that are trying to do that.
Jeremy, we have a couple questions. Can we stop for, okay.
Yep.
So one question is, will we see students' test scores within 72 hours if we use NSCAS growth for our winter testing instead of map growth?
Yes, right. So within 72 hours of a student completing the test for the winter pilot, you will get their scores at within that 72 hours. Absolutely, for NSCAS growth. Yep.
Okay, and will we receive data by strand or just by item?
So is it aggregated up into, is it compiled into those strands? I don't know that information. So if somebody on the line can get me an answer to that, better.
I think Katrina is saying that that's the goal, but they're still doing testing. So just want to put that out there. And then one more, with the item level data, how are you thinking teachers will use that information? Just concerned about making decisions about students based on really small numbers of items.
Yeah, so aggregating that up to the class and school or district level is obviously preferable to making a whole lot of decisions based on individual students, especially after one test. The thing that I'd say is after time, right? Once students have fall and winter, there might be decisions that you want to make at the individual student level once there potentially is enough data based on indicators. I think what I'd say overall is that we are working on that professional development piece about what is appropriate use of what level of data to be able to help you with that as we move forward, and to make sure that we're supporting districts, schools, teachers about the use of the NSCAS growth data as we move forward. So obviously we want to be careful about the amount of data that we have to present the evidence that we need to actually make decisions, whatever those are, whether those are programmatic pieces or individual student pieces. So trying to make sure that we communicate that and are supporting you in that way is what we're working on.
Okay, and can you tell us if there's going to be a standard IRIP report that NDE will expect to be shared with parents, perhaps after winter or after spring or going forward?
So what I'll tell you is that we'll expect a summative piece to be put out to districts at the end of the year. Whether the districts want to put out information after each of those administrations for parents, I assume that you're going to want to do that in many cases because parents expect that information because they're used to getting that information. I believe that those will be there. I think we'll be leaving the fall and winter up to district discretion about whether they and how they share that information. I think we'll be only involved in the summative determination piece.
Okay, well, student reports, I guess that's what she meant to ask. Student reports will be available.
Yeah, that it's the same answer, right? So I don't think we're going to be involved in those decisions for you in fall and winter. I think it's only for the summative because that's the law is only gets into that summative piece, and so that's the only thing I'm interested in dealing with. We want to support you, right, in fall and winter and being able to provide information to parents, but as far as requirements, would only be around those summative pieces.
Okay, and if we could have two more questions. How can NSCAS growth scores be used to compare growth from 2nd to 3rd and from 8th to 9th grade?
From 2nd to 3rd, so from 2nd to 3rd and from 8th to 9th, if the district is using map growth, right, you'll have a RIT score from 2nd and from 3rd, right? So you'd be able to look at that growth piece there, and then from 8th and into 9th, if they're using map growth, you'd be able to use those RIT scores in both of those cases. We have the psychometricians working on and making sure that we support both of those transitions. So into NSCAS growth and out of NSCAS growth, because the RIT scores are comparable across that, but there might be some nuances in those scales and everything. And so if there are any particular points that we want people to be careful about, or that we think we need to be careful about, we are working on those pieces to be able to support that transition and interpretation across the two tests. So I don't have a whole lot of information about that, except that we've been, from NDE's perspective, we've been very clear about needing to support districts in the professional learning space around those transitions, so that you don't feel like there's a lot of we're worried about confusion between the two, and so we're trying to make sure that there's clarity in the way that students would move between the two tests. Let's put it that way.
And then for the year 22-23 and accountability requirements growth, will this pilot data in the spring be the baseline moving forward, or is the new baseline when the test is operational?
That is a really good question. So so currently NDE is being supported by the Center for Assessment around accountability and figuring out how to move forward with the accountability system. That group is meeting regularly at this point in time, and they're looking at the options that are available to us around growth based on the new NSCAS growth model. And so being able to determine how we move forward with that and what is usable information for accountability calculations is part of their work. It is possible. What I tell you is we believe it's going to be possible to look at growth between this spring and next spring. For accountability purposes, you would be able to do that. You'd also be able to look at growth between next fall and next spring, right? So across the year for that operational time. So those are going to be optional pieces. I'm going to get into standard setting and new cut scores here in a minute. And so that kind of give you some ideas about what we're thinking as far as how we move forward from there. So I'm going to leave it at that and then maybe answer questions related to it again as I give you that other information.
Okay. Thank you, Jeremy.
Yep. Okay. This is so there's lots of resources that are coming out or already out. This is just as a reminder. These are the introductory resources that we released during admin days. The top piece is the link. We have those videos, the vignettes and the other information that's available to you. Those are meant really as high level introductory pieces. They do get more nuanced as you go down that, depending on your level of comfort and everything. Obviously, they're there for you to help inform your teachers and form stakeholders, whatever the case may be, as you see fit in your community and what you're ready to do. So in addition, so this information was, or it came out earlier this week, the lockdown browsers for winter and for spring, this is the same one, are available now. So letting your IT staff know that is available and can be pushed out to your devices and everything. There is a technology guide for those things, and they can, if they have questions about that, and those processes, they should call NWA's help desk, not me. I know enough to be dangerous, but other than that, those are now released and available for districts to go ahead and distribute to the devices. So that information is there. One thing I'll point to is just the partnership email from Tuesday, the 12th this week, had a lot of the links that I have. They're linked in the PowerPoint as well. But a lot of the links to the support documents are in that partnership email from Tuesday morning. Just as another reminder of upcoming things. So the winter pilot administration training, there's 3 opportunities for that. Those are available. Those are all the same. So if you miss, you only need to schedule yourself for one of those. If you can't make any of them, there will be the recording available, and additional other help resources as well. So those are upcoming. I think we did have a little bit of confusion maybe around the 18th because we have ACT, this presentation about ACT that day, and this pilot training, administration training as well, but that was in the email that we sent out this morning to try to clarify that. This looks really busy, I know, and the things that are linked here aren't showing up here on the screen, but this table was in the partnership update. So there's lots of resources that are coming out to help support you as we move forward into the pilot and everything. And so a lot of these are out and are linked in the PowerPoint or that partnership email, or are coming soon. And so I know some of you have probably read all of this stuff already that's out, because you're that diligent and that on top of things, or you don't sleep, one of the two. So as we keep moving forward, hopefully those documents are supporting you in the processes. If you have questions or other needs, please let us know. It's probably a good time to remind you that in general, we're looking for feedback, right? So on anything, it could be documentation, it could be the platform, it could be any of the pieces around assessment, around NSCAS growth. If you have feedback for us, we are open to that feedback and looking at improving things as we move forward. And so at any time, feel like you can put together an email or send us questions or comments as we move forward to support you in this move, in this transition. Student resources are currently intended to be available.
I'm sorry, Jeremy, can
Yep.
you answer this quick question here? Is the accommodations document going to be updated for 2021?
I have the accommodation slide coming up here in a
Oh,
minute.
sorry. Thank you.
Nope, you're fine. So NSCAS growth, student resources. So the item type sampler, practice test, and student tutorial with the new system are going to be available the week of November 1st, but I pulled them out just because I was trying to make slides of the resources that are going to be available for you. We'll do this one now. This is my favorite topic. If anybody has some Tums, send them my way. Rostering in general is fun stuff, right? So what I'll tell you right now is this is still in flux. What I thought I understood yesterday, I didn't. And I have asked us to go back again because I'm worried about how it's going to work. And so I don't have the answers for you at this time because I'm trying to go back and make sure that it is working differently than it is right now. And so as soon as everything stabilizes, I will provide that information about how it's going to work. What I'm trying to do is make things easier on you and get those changes done for winter is what I'll tell you right now. I know that is incredibly vague, but I'm trying to make sure that the existing infrastructure can be utilized to the best of our ability moving forward. That's what I'll say. In addition, we have multiple paths moving forward. So we are working through auto rostering option through Advisor, but I'm also exploring other auto rostering avenues long term, right? So I haven't shut down Clever or any of the other auto rostering solutions at this time. I'm exploring both options moving forward long term. So if we are moving forward with some pieces around using Advisor and auto rostering, that is a separate avenue than current auto rostering solutions. Those auto rostering solutions have not been shut down. We're not forcing everybody at this time. We're not forcing everybody to go to the Advisor auto rostering route or anything like that. I'm still working on options for both of those long term. I don't have answers yet. I have people that are interested in pushing everybody in the same direction, but I also have concerns about that myself, and I know districts have concerns. So we haven't shut down any of those avenues yet, but we are moving forward on multiple fronts. Yeah, manual rostering will always, I assume manual rostering will always be available. It will always be an option, I would assume, moving forward. There's that functionality shouldn't go away. Any other rostering stuff that people need to ask me at this point in time? I know that was incredibly vague. I will try to get you better information moving forward as soon as I'm comfortable with where we're at. Not that I'm going to be happy with everything necessarily, but
okay. Can you speak to the use of Clever?
Jeremy, specifically what I'm wondering is, because the indications we've gotten from NWEA is, well, we can't do this now, but we're looking for it for later. Are they?
Yeah, so we're still looking at options for this winter.
Okay.
Yep, that's what I'm not okay with, and that's what we're working on. Yeah, by manual CSV file. Yeah, yep. Yeah, being able to upload just a static file. Absolutely. Okay, it's time for more. Just a second. Okay, anything else? Any other questions there about rostering at this time, Trudy?
No, sir.
Okay. I know that's not satisfactory. We'll get it. So retesting policy, we've had a lot of questions
Just a
about
second.
this.
Bethany, do you have a question?
I do. I'm sorry. I have one more question.
Okay,
The one piece with rostering I'm really unsure about is they keep talking about how we can pull accommodations in that way. I don't see how that's possible.
unless it's already in a system to begin with, right?
Right. And so is there not going to be any way to do that in a file? Will they then have to manually enter all of it?
So there is a way.
Do you want me to take that, Jeremy?
You can if you want. Yeah, absolutely. And then I'll clarify if I understand it differently. Go ahead, Maggie.
Once the NDE's state file is in the system for the winter pilot, the districts will be able to download that roster from the new platform, add the accommodations to that file, and then upload back into the new testing system. That you can do that for all accommodations and NTC codes.
Right. So you would be able to, if you have accommodation information in any sort of environment, that you could pull it down and have related fields, right? So the student identifying number and those types of things, you'd be able to merge those files, or you'd be able to take that file and add the accommodation information into that CSV file, spreadsheet file, and then be able to upload it back into the system so that you don't have to go and touch all of those individually.
And is that
That's-
just at the district level, or could we do that by school? I mean, who will have access? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
I want to say it's at the district level only, because you will be able to see sensitive information.
That is true.
On
Yeah,
the file.
and so I think it is at the district level. I think you're right, Maggie.
Thanks.
You're uploading it into the new NSCAS growth platform. Okay, so let's talk about retesting policy. So we've had quite a few questions about retesting policy. What I'll say in general is that we are open to retesting to be more like what you do for interim testing, right? So we are open to students that test too quickly or have other extenuating circumstances of being able to test so that we get good, valid, reliable data, not only for individual testing in the fall and in the winter, but also in the spring around scores that would be used for summative proficiency and accountability pieces. So we're open to that moving forward. We had advisory group kind of help us with this a little bit, actually a lot, to help try to form the policy. And the good news is that the group was overall was really close to being in consensus in general about how we should be doing this. So the first thing that I'll say is that we are working on a policy memo or a guidance document to be clear about all of these things, but I thought I would summarize right now. So we're looking for standardization, right? So that it's the same across all districts. We don't want one district making decisions that are wildly different than the other districts across the state. So trying to make that consistent. What I'll say with that is that we've been listening to districts. So everybody might have to give a little bit, right, to get to that standardization and that common understanding of what we're going to look for in retesting, or what would be allowed for retesting. In general, the group was very clear that it should be rare, that we shouldn't just be doing it willy-nilly and just saying, oh, that's a little bit lower, or whatever the case may be, and just retesting all of the students. It's not necessarily a good use of our time. There are fluctuations in testing and student scores and those types of things. And so we want to be clear about that. Because it's connected to accountability and reporting and everything, we want to make sure it's documented, and so that it's fair and then therefore standardized as well. and straightforward, right? So we want to make sure that the guidance we provide is easy to understand, but we also don't want to necessarily question everybody's decisions each time they make it, and make it so that you have to have that approved by state people every time that you request it, right? What we're thinking is tracking that information and documenting that information, but not necessarily having myself or Trudy or somebody else at the state approve every single request for retesting as we move forward, because I don't think that's efficient, and I don't think that's but just quite frankly, I think most of the time you're going to make the best decision because you have the best information, and we're going to try to make sure we rely on that. In general, try to make sure that we look at if there's anomalies or districts that are using it more than others, that we have conversations as opposed to penalties and those types of things. So that's kind of what we're looking at. These are the types of situations that the group identified. Obviously, a student that clicks through the test really quickly, you might want that student to test again. As a reminder, there is not rapid guessing flags yet in the system. We're working on those pieces for NSCAS growth. But if when the results are done, if it looks like a student took 2 minutes to take the test, you can decide if you want to have that student retake the test or not. Is what what we're working towards, right? And what we believe will happen. Non-quantitative stuff, right? So illness. I don't know how many of us have been there. The student finishes the test, and then we find out that the student, they really weren't feeling very well, and they didn't really do, but we went ahead and had them take the whole test anyway, and you're like, well, why did you do that? And then the student gets sick or whatever the case may be. And if that's the case, then let's have them retest again if that makes sense, and those types of things. And so you can see the rest of the things on there. In general, we want to be open to that, but we want it to be rare because we don't want to schedule all kinds of other tests. So we want to be clear about how we do this moving forward, and be as consistent as we can across the state. So that's kind of where we are with that. Okay, so that will that policy document, cleaning that up and trying to be clear about those, but that's kind of what we're thinking about as far as the retest policy goes. As far as like rapid guessing and test times, I assume that we're going to actually kind of determine thresholds with some feedback from districts to try to say, here's where the level is that we should be thinking about those types of tests, retests. So accessibility. So there was accommodation questions earlier. So in general, what's going on in this front, and this is we're currently moving forward on this as of kind of yesterday. We're going to still try to do this. So for this, we're taking this summative assessment manual, accessibility manual, accessibility supports for both students with IEPs and English language learners, and looking at, do we need to make any changes to this document as we're moving from kind of end of the year summative testing to through year testing, interim like testing, right? And so looking at that, we have a couple of things specifically that are being asked. And so we are seeking feedback and input from districts and stakeholders to kind of say, do we need to make any changes? Do we need to, I don't know, modify anything because of these changes around the move to through year? And so we're looking at that still. we believe there's going to be minimal changes. So if you're using the documents that are currently out there, we think in general that you're in pretty good hands. But there are some specific accommodations or accessibility questions around reading and some other things that we haven't answered yet. And so the intention is to have a summary to you of any changes by November 1st, and then finalize the manual by November 5th so that it's static, and then seeking feedback, any other feedback from both the pilot and the operational in the spring moving forward is our intention. So we hope to have or intending to have those answered and solidified for the rest of the year here at the beginning of the month. So people have not received emails from those. Those are going to be going out, and we're going to be asking for that input. And then we are working towards a meeting to get that feedback. Like I said, we think it's only around a couple of questions. And so we don't think there's going to be necessarily broad changes or anything like that. But they might be impactful if they are changes. So that's where we are.
Can you tell us if there are going to be changes to the accessibility manual that impact the winter testing? And what about text to speech?
Text to speech is available. I don't know. Bethany, can you explain more about what you mean by that?
Well, one of the big questions was whether text to speech was going to be continuing to be allowable in the English language arts assessment, given that the interim uses of it, some places didn't allow it because the instructional decisions that were being made based on those data were not the same, like purposes as the summative. And if we need to make decisions about interventions for kids, then we need to know whether they can read independently, not with supports like that.
Yes, so that specific question is still on the table.
Okay, and will information such as accommodations and other student demographic information, will that information be consistently protected like it has been in the past?
It will be consistently protected. Yes, there is that information in the system, and it is only viewable with certain roles and permissions. And so maintaining that security around that demographic information is very important to us, and we're trying to make sure that that remains tight. Yes.
In previewing the 10-15-21 upcoming training, a slide mentions that for the winter, I think this is accountabilities, can either be used or not used. Can you clarify this is a student that has an IEP, 504, EL, etc.? What's ACC? Not quite sure what that is.
Hey, Jeremy, this is Melanie. That was my question.
Yeah.
And so I can clarify, I put it in the notes, but you have comments coming in like crazy. So thank you for addressing them. So my question is, and if you don't want to address it, and I just listen on Friday to the training, I will follow up because I've taken many notes on clarity and questions that I do have.
Sure.
But a slide basically said in the preview slides that I can see, which thank you for sharing those early. Basically, there's a slide that mentions that you can use accommodations or you don't have to. And so I get the non-tested codes, like you're telling us that's optional, you don't have to do that. So with the accommodations, I think what that means is we can decide to document them or not. But if a student has an IEP or 504, for example, let's just use text to speech, then on the winter pilot, that should be provided if in fact it is like ELA and that's an accommodation that is utilized. Would that be true?
Yeah, so generally speaking, if a student has an IEP with an accommodation, you should always employ that accommodation. Right?
Okay, but, and I agree with you wholeheartedly, but in terms of the documentation, there's a mismatch that I'm having. I get that the non-tested codes we can choose to do or not do, but with the accommodations, as a result of what you just said,
Yeah.
is the
So-
accommodation optional for documentation in the
As
winter
far as
pilot?
documentation goes, so we're not really looking at it. So it's there again for tracking purposes and all of those types of things. If you don't get all the accommodation information in for the winter pilot, no harm, no foul. Okay.
Okay,
so
thank you. I'll
it's-
show my face since I'm
Yep,
just,
no, that's
going
fine.
on and on.
It's a good question, right? So yeah, we always want accommodation information to be done and everything. The winter pilot, I would consider it the same as not tested codes. It's an optional piece for tracking those pieces, right?
Got it.
Some of those you're going to have to mark because if you're employing them, that's how you do it. But others, there's no. You just mark it for tracking purposes as opposed to using it, right? So yeah.
okay, thank you.
Yep. Okay, NSCAS growth paper pencil. So once again, we are continuing with the limited reasons why a student would need a paper pencil. Obviously, students that need Braille or large print would still need paper pencil. And so you're able to order those through the system and those would be delivered. Much like what we've been doing for quite a while now, or for some time now. For English standard version or a Spanish standard version, those would be printed by the district and then destroyed by the district after testing. In all cases for paper pencil, a proctor or adult, whoever you decide is going to do this, and we've given some guidance here, will mark answers. So the student answers the booklet or an answer sheet, depending on their particular disability and what they're capable of doing and how they're capable of interacting with the assessment. And then a proctor would input those responses into the online system, and then results would be available within 72 hours, just like you would expect for a student that takes the online test. Obviously, the push to have students test online is once again is a lot about the fact that it's not adaptive. The paper pencil version is not adaptive for students, and so they don't get the optimal testing experience as far as the test adapting to their ability and where they are. We continue to look for other options to get more students online. In general, what I'll tell you is that most students have been online. If we take 2020 and 2021 out of the mix, we were down to very few students using paper pencil. In some cases, I think there was only about, well, I don't want to say numbers, but we're talking about a couple of hundred kids total statewide across all of the grade levels. And a lot of those students were in external programs, and we're having a renewed push to get those students to be online as opposed to be paper pencil for those standard versions. Obviously the Braille large print are things that we continue to work on and think about as well, to how we continue to support students in that space. Yeah, for the winter pilot, all the same versions of paper pencil are available for the winter pilot as for the spring as well. So that is available for the winter pilot. Yeah,
Melanie,
so
did you get your question answered? I'm sorry, regarding
Yeah,
the
so-
accommodation.
Yeah, so as far as the accommodations, any reason that is in the accessibility manual right now, as far as paper pencil would go. So right now, the only way for a student to have a side-by-side translation, it would be to have paper pencil. So we see some of that with it's a student that would need an English version and a Spanish version together would be a good reason. If there's a reason, these are really rare, right? So if we have a student that is non-technology exposed at all, right? So if we have a student that is most likely an immigrant, has no experience with technology, I don't know if there's a ton of students worldwide that would fit into that category anymore. But it is an option for paper pencil. Our incarcerated students still have paper pencil options, or students that have been removed from technology, right? So if a student has no access to technology because of behavior or some religious exemption, that is still an option. So basically a student would have to have no technology at any time during instruction to be able to fit under those categories. And so there's really rare circumstances. Like I said, any of those would be in the accessibility manual about why a paper pencil option would be available.
And Jeremy, this is Melanie again.
Yeah.
I just need to add clarification, because what I'm speaking to is the pre-pilot and common, it's not common, but for example, alternate assessment, we were able to print paper pencil. Sometimes you got to cut it up or what have you. And so
Absolutely.
right, but this was a general ed student who in their IEP required paper pencil. And last year I was able to print a paper pencil that came with an answer key, and then it's not reported. Basically, it was ours to do internally provided. And we did the same thing for large print. We didn't turn those in. They were
correct. Last year we didn't, because we weren't going down that path. Correct. Yep.
Okay, so is the same true for winter, spring, or no? It is just large print Braille and the side by sides.
That is correct. It's
Okay.
only the large print Braille, and so everybody else we would expect to test. Yep.
Okay, thank you.
And all of that would come into the system. That there's not a standalone side version. That was really only to fill the void during last year's pre-pilot.
Okay, thank you.
Yep. Good question.
Lori, are you talking about the paper classroom assessment, or are you talking about paper pencil large print Braille? It's
paper pencil large print and Braille for the winter pilot. When do we have to have those ordered by? I mean, we're testing before January 21st.
okay. Well, you can order up until that point.
Up until that point, but starting mid.
I believe November 8th when you get
Okay.
in this with the system. So you'd be able to order starting November 8th and then all the way through. Yep.
Okay.
Is my understanding.
Is Spanish available for the online NSCAS growth?
I want to say yes, but I don't want to be wrong.
Yes, it is available online.
Thank you, Maggie, for saving me there. Yeah, and most of our students, if you look back at our numbers historically, most of our students that need Spanish are online Spanish as opposed to paper pencil Spanish, and which is good because it's better all the way around. It's easier. Okay. So NSCAS growth security, I've had some questions about this. The security manual, in general, what I would say is that this is state testing, right? And so the expectations are generally the same. But what we're trying to do, and based on feedback from stakeholders and everything, and really a change of philosophy, I think on our part, in trying to be responsive to the feedback that we've gotten, we're trying to loosen up things where we can, right? So just as an example, test tickets and storage of test tickets. So we're trying to make sure that that is not overly burdensome. I know some of you are going to say that test tickets in general are overly burdensome. I don't necessarily disagree, but the system requires them at this time. In general, what you'll find is that as processes are changed and loosened up, for lack of a better word, that information is in manuals. about how you can do that and what the expectation is. We're looking in general about how to update all the processes and everything to be more interim-like as opposed to more summative-like. That being said, it's still state testing, content is still secure, and all of those types of things. And so generally speaking, what I would do is say err on the side of being very careful with content and exposing security breaches and those types of things. I don't know, is that sufficient? Do you have further questions around that? At this time, anyway. Okay, not tested codes.
Jeremy, this is Teresa. Sorry, I
Oh,
couldn't type
nope.
fast enough.
You're fine,
before
go
you
ahead.
on. Yeah, so I just want to be clear. So I had sent you that email about the security training. So I think what I hear you say is for the winter pilot, we don't need to go around and do the security trainings that we do for the summative, but we will need to in the spring for the summative.
I would definitely say that is the case. And if you want to, and so my plan still currently, and it depends on your timelines and everything. And I get that, especially some of our larger districts might already be past this point that they've done some of these things. I would encourage you to always do the security training, right? For the winter pilot, even. If you don't get it done for the winter pilot, you definitely need to do it for spring, but it's secure content in the winter pilot as well. And so if you do the security types of training for winter pilot, I would say you don't have to do it again for spring. I would just mention that it is covered for both winter and spring.
Okay, so my follow-up question then is, will you be, do you have the security slides ready to go?
They are not, but I will do that. That's on Trudy's list for me to do.
When do you think those would be available?
I will have it done by November 1st.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
The security PowerPoint is coming, Melanie. So
Yeah, so the November 1st, just what I said. Yep. And Trudy and Allie, they'll keep me on task and make sure I get it done.
Yep.
I don't think that's a big lift to get that done. It's just updating some stuff and making sure it's ready. There's not a big lift there, I don't think. So not tested code. So we've been having questions about this. And good questions, right? I was very hopeful that we wouldn't need a COVID waiver going forward. Just for your information, as we're looking at things, we had about 8,000 students total last year statewide that had COVID waivers or COVID emergency medical waiver type things. Those, and this won't surprise anybody, those were located mostly in our larger districts. Of course, that's where a lot of the optional types of instructional pieces were being done, either remote or in-person learning and those types of things. And so there was larger amounts of students that were taking options and families that opted out of testing in the spring of last year. I've been directed to go ahead and offer a COVID waiver again this year. I think a lot of us were hoping that we were beyond that. I don't think we are right now. And so that being said, it was easier last year in a lot of ways because there was no accountability plan. And so we didn't have to worry about how those were going to be treated in accountability. So I've been working with Lane Carr around this. In general, what I'll say is circumstances have evolved, right? We now have vaccines that are widely available, except not for all grade levels and for all ages yet, right? Although we still believe those are coming. We do have, in general, what I'll say is last year when we had to make decisions about COVID waiver, we have a lot better information about COVID and COVID spread than we did last year, especially when the COVID information was originally put out there. There are going to be tighter restrictions around the COVID waiver. So we wouldn't expect anywhere near the 8,000 students that we had this year to have COVID waivers. And the scoring for reporting and accountability may be different. We are meeting with an advisory committee on the 22nd to provide feedback around the current plan, to see if we're kind of hitting the mark or what the feedback is, and then looking at that policy again. So what I'll say is it's probably going to be more difficult, and there is likely to be an approval process with the COVID waiver this year. So it won't be just you sign up for it and you get it. And so we're going to expect it to be much more rarely used going into this year, as opposed to what was going on last year. And I think at least I'm pretty comfortable with where we are, but we'll see based on the feedback from that advisory group where everybody else is, and if we think we need to move around a little bit as far as that goes. So not tested code is available for the winter pilot, but it's will be, the new guidance will be in effect for the spring. Winter, once again, there's not need for makeup testing and everything, so there's no need to apply for or get COVID waivers, emergency medical waivers. All those types of things for winter are not required, so you don't have to plan on it. If you have, and I think I might have missed that earlier in one of the slides, is that in general, so if you have a student that's not going to test for an emergency medical reason, you don't have to go through and fill out the paperwork for winter. You don't even plan on doing those types of things, right? You just, because there's no makeup testing required, that would only be for spring. And so that is the intention for the COVID information as well. Whatever we land on exactly will be for spring. You can follow whatever kind of guidance that you have in your district as far as having students test in the winter pilot.
If students test in winter but not spring because they are sick, will that be enough?
Ooh, I didn't even think about that. It's possible. I mean, there's no reason technically that we couldn't use that score. I mean, it wouldn't be as high in general, theoretically, right? I mean, there's been instruction in general. Let me think about that. I don't have an answer. It's a good question.
That would be better than them counting as not tested, though.
Right. In general, I would agree with that. Right. I don't know if logistically there's things that I need to think about or whatever, but I'll take it back. Absolutely. I just hadn't thought about it yet.
Jeremy,
Yeah.
that would be really the same question going forward, because we could
Right.
have kids test fall and winter and then not in the spring. So
Yeah, and that is the intention, right? Is that to have less zero scores in general. Absolutely, and it's one of the advantages of the new system, right? Is that theoretically, if for whatever reason a student is able to test, then you can go back to winter or go back to fall. That is definitely our intention. So what I would have to see is, so there are going to be some differences between the winter test design and the spring test design. But in general, I think it is going to be possible to do what's being suggested there. So, but I don't want to commit to anything right now, but it is a good question. We'll look at it to see if that's possible. Any other questions there? I'm going to stop looking over there.
Could you address whether they should replace NSCAS or MAPS growth with NSCAS growth for winter and spring, please?
Yeah, so go back to our guidance from the beginning of the year. And this is really up to districts, right? About whether they do MAP growth in the winter and the spring is really up to you and how you use that. I know many of our districts are going to want to do that because they haven't seen the reports from this. They haven't seen the data from this, that they count on MAP growth to do a lot of their processes. And I totally get that. So if that's the direction you're going, that's perfectly fine. You still need to participate in one of the NSCAS growth assessments, even if you do MAP growth in this winter And then you would have to do both of them in the spring because it would basically be like summative testing again. So it's really a district decision. We also have districts that have indicated, well, this is the direction we're going to go. So this is the direction we're going to go. Even if it's not perfect at this point in time, it's what we're going to do. Instead of having 2 platforms and 2 tests, we're just going to go this direction because this is the direction the state is going anyway. And so both of those decisions, or any number of those decisions, make sense to me. And I would have to make those on an individual district basis based on the information and your comfort. What I'm hoping, right, is that as we continue to move forward, people are feeling more comfortable, and that but those decisions need to be made. And I get that scheduling needs to be done. If you want to have consultation with me, that's perfectly fine. We'll set up a call and we can talk through the options, the pros, the cons, what that means for your district, because it's not consistent, right? The way you use map growth and map growth data and NSCAS growth data going forward are not going to be consistent. And so we want to support you in whatever decision that you make. It's what I think is best is that you look at the data that you're going to get. If you feel comfortable, go ahead. Or if you feel like even if you're not comfortable, that we just need to go, I get that. And so, if you want to have a call with me, send me an email, let's set something up and let's talk about it if you haven't made a decision yet. Or we can do a group of schools. If any issue wants to put together a call and have that conversation, I'm perfectly open to that. Talk about the pros and cons, kind of how I would see it. But I'm not in your shoes. I'm not in a district. And so that decision might be different for District A than it is for District B. So that's kind of where we are.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Yep. Okay. So not tested codes, we're going to continue on with this. Like I said, not tested codes are not required for winter, but we encourage them for content areas where you test. The reason why we encourage them is because we want to test that functionality. Tracking purposes, this system is way better as far as tracking students that have not tested and students that have completed testing, what I can tell you. And so putting not tested codes in will help you track that information and give you a sense of what it looks like as we get into spring and everything. So there's good reasons to go ahead and put that in there. But if you don't, nobody's coming after you and knocking at your door, right? So it's really as you have time, as you see fit, whatever your district wants to do, right? I mean, and this could be different once again based on district. So District A may say, no, we want the reasons not tested because we want to know why you didn't get it done and we don't have the data, right? District B may say, no, we're comfortable because we're doing map growth over here. So don't worry about those not tested codes, right? It is a district decision for the winter pilot about how to do those, how much to do those, whatever the case may be. Once again, do not spend a whole lot of extra time doing this. So if you're only testing ELA and NSCAS growth in winter, do not go through and put not tested codes in for all of the math. I mean, you can if you want, but nobody cares. I mean, nobody's looking at that data. It's not a big deal. If you want to do it so it's clean and it looks done, then that's fine, but right. So districts have, in the new system, districts have expanded access, that's the word I used, expanded access to not tested codes. If you've looked at some of the manuals and everything, you'll notice that there are additional not tested codes and not tested codes that districts have typically not had access to be able to put into the system. And we've done this for a number of reasons. One, accuracy and tracking, right? Two, if the data that's coming out and streaming out of the system is updating real time, And so if you have not tested codes, we want that to be in the system. That being said, there are not tested codes that will need to be verified or confirmed by NDE. The manual says NDE approval. Approval is a big word at this time, is what I'll say. In some cases, you don't have to necessarily apply for a not tested code, but if you mark it, we're going to be checking it on our end. So one thing that I'll say is we have a lot better access to see what's going on statewide with not tested codes and who is tested and all of those types of things. And so in some cases, Maggie will be verifying some of the not tested codes. So if all of a sudden somebody puts in a bunch of invalids, which are basically security breaches, and the student had some improper types of activities during testing, then we're going to reach out and go, hey, what's going on? Those types of things. But you don't necessarily have to like apply for an invalid. You would have a security breach or something like that, and we would instruct you to put that into the system, right? Or we can, and actually we can do those as well. So I'm not gonna, well, I don't think so. It depends on if you guys want me to or not. I'm not gonna go over each of these myself, right? But there are additional pieces in there. So a couple of them that I will talk about. So emergency medical waiver and COVID waiver are going to probably, once again, COVID waiver isn't solidified yet, but both of those are probably going to need NDE approval, right? So there'll be a process for that. Emergency medical waiver is pretty well established about how that works. Exception, so if a student is exempt from testing for any number of reasons, you're going to be able to put that in the system now, and so you'll be able to track that. So one of the good that's actually not the word I want. A good example of that is sometimes students are served in out-of-state facilities for whatever reason in their lives. And if when a student is out of state, we don't require state testing because moving that test over state lines and all of the things that might be involved in that. And so you'd be able to mark that student as exempt or an exception. So that is access that you'll have that you haven't had before. And we haven't figured out all of the processes about confirming that information. What I'll say is if you all of a sudden you put a bunch of exceptions in for a class, somebody's going to be asking questions about it, right? About why we have that if we haven't had that communication. So in general, when they say NDE approval, you should be using them rarely and usually only in consultation with NDE staff members, but there might not be an approval process necessarily. It might be just a discussion with you about this specific circumstances. In most of those cases, Maggie's going to be tracking that information. She does a great job of tracking out-of-state placements, for example, and tracking that information. So we'd want to know what those are and how we're using those moving forward. Full-time equivalency for, if a student isn't 51% time in the public school or more being served, those types of things, invalids. So they're all listed there for you. Like I said, I don't necessarily need to go over all of them, but you'd have expanded access to put those into the system in a different way. And part of this is, like I said, tracking, and some of this is just to simplify it going forward. A lot of the codes that you have access to that you haven't had access before, it was during the cleanup process, and the cleanup process lasts too long and takes too long, and we want to make that much more efficient moving forward is really what we want to do. And so the good news is Maggie can put this information in from her side too. So if she gets information that we need to exempt a student or invalidate a student, she can put that information in on her side as well, and you don't necessarily have to go in and do it. But then it's marked and it's done already. So there'll be probably more information about the processes around not tested codes, especially for spring. coming forward, moving forward. Some of this is we're figuring it out on our end too, because it's a new functionality on our side as well.
2 points of clarification, please.
Yep.
For winter, or are you talking spring only regarding the waiver for COVID-19 and
Yeah,
emergency
so
medical
for COVID waiver for winter, you can use it at will for tracking purposes for winter. Whatever new guidance we put out around the COVID waiver will be used for spring specifically. So if for approval or whatever, but yeah, you can use it however you want for winter, basically.
So they could use the COVID waiver only for tracking without getting approval.
Correct. Yeah. And no approval is necessary for winter type things. If you have emergency medical waiver, COVID waiver, whatever it is, you don't have to ask for permission or whatever. You can use that at kind of at will in the winter pilot.
And could you share the difference between FTE and remove or NCE?
I'm just thinking there might be some overlap there.
Yeah, there might be some overlap. Once again, Maggie had a lot of input in this to try to get to what she sees and the discussion she's had with people. And so she tried to make a lot of things tighter in some ways, right? And more universal across assessments, ACT and alternate as well. Yeah, there might be some overlap in there. What I'll say in general is if you have questions, Maggie's the person to ask. If you have a clarifying, in general, well, there can be some differences, right? So different not tested codes have different repercussions as far as reporting and accountability go. And so you want to get it as right as possible because you want to avoid, and what I'll say is Maggie's going to be checking those. She can run reports in the new system and look at all the invalids across the whole state and just pull that information. And so she's going to be checking it a lot. I think she's actually looking forward to it. Don't tell her I told you, but she's pretty excited about all the different ways that she can pull information in the new system. So in general, yeah, there's always a little bit of overlap, I think, in not tested codes because determining some of it is there's subjective nature of determining what the reason is ultimately as well. So get into this a little bit. So this is science. NSCAS growth and science are not the same thing. NSCAS Science Summative is different, but it's on the same platform. The reason why I bring it up is just because it's standard setting and related information. And so it makes sense to put it in here now for this reason, because of how it relates to NSCAS growth and how it comes back. So just for clarity, this spring, grades 5 and 8 for the general assessment, aligned to CCR science standards, grades 5, 8, and 11 for alternate, aligned to the extended indicators or extended standards. Cut scores will be determined this year, right? So this is despite the standards being approved for quite some time now. This is going to be the first operational year for science. As such, we have to set cut scores. And so we'll be bringing in teacher groups this summer for both the alternate and the general to do the cut score process and make cut score recommendations. We expect approval in August or September of those cut scores. And so you will not have summative scores for science about proficiency until August or September, right? So we can't determine what level a student is at as far as achievement level until those cut scores have been determined. For your information, and just so transparency and all of those types of things, is we are open to renaming and new definitions for achievement levels. What that means is the current naming and achievement levels on track, developing on track, and CCR benchmark are open again for us to update or revise and also add to. One of the things that one of the comments that we've gotten and we're going to look at is, do we need a fourth achievement level If 50% of our students are in the developing level, does it make sense for us to have a second level in there so we can see some movement? That is a good open question. We'll be bringing in some stakeholders and to advise us on that moving forward. A common criticism of the current naming is the CCR benchmark. And because a lot of parents feel that that's confusing, or I shouldn't say, a lot of parents are confused by that. And so we'll be looking at that naming convention. Do we want to keep developing it on track, and do we want to change CCR benchmark moving forward? I think the answer from a lot of people is probably yes there, but I'm not making that determination myself. We'll be looking for stakeholder groups to provide input to it for us moving forward about those naming and definitions moving forward. So basically, just confirming that we are open to changes in that area for science at this time. As always, if you remember back to the change to college and career ready standards for both ELA, even though that was in 2017, and mathematics in 2018, we told you this a lot, but a lot of people didn't listen until it actually happened. New science standards probably mean lower levels of proficiency, right? So the rigor of standards has increased. Most likely there'll be lower percentage of students that are proficient. I say that, but I have no idea ultimately what will happen. I'm just trying to prep people for that. If you look back at 2019, the last time we had science based on old legacy standards, I think like 68% of students statewide were proficient in those grades. That I don't know if that number will stick, most likely because the rigor is going up of the standards, that number is going to probably be lower. But I don't know that for sure because we have to let that cut score process play out and do that. In general, what I'll say is that it's important to remember that cut scores are both a content and a policy decision-making process, right? So we bring in content people, we bring in classroom teachers to make a recommendation, but ultimately that recommendation goes to the Board of Education for approval. And so policy considerations can come into that at a time. Whatever the recommendations are, they usually have to stay within a reasonable movement of those recommendations. But this summer we'll be bringing in those groups for both the alternate and the general to help make cut score determinations and recommendations that will ultimately go to the board for science.
Jeremy, can I ask a question quick?
Yeah.
It's in the chat, but I don't want it to be overlooked. And based on what you just said, believe it or not, I read the technical guide from 2020, and
Okay.
I know that sounds crazy, but I needed the background. I needed the history. I needed
It's
the
okay.
ELA 2017, revisited in 2018. Yep. Cut scores were the same, naming convention or achievement levels. So yep. Can I just have clarification? Are you suggesting then that based on this process for science, and then it goes before the State Board of Education, that conversation and that policy would affect all content areas based on the cut score?
Yep. So let me go ahead and do this next slide for you because I think I answered your question. Okay. No, you're perfectly fine. And that's why I put science in there actually, is because I think it leads directly to your next question, right?
Okay.
There is one other question on science, if I could ask that, please.
Okay. Yep. Sure.
Okay. So there are no science results, correct, for 2021. It was a field test, so no science results.
It was field test only. There is no science. Yeah, and we have a science a data piece coming up that where we're looking at the item statistics, the task statistics, and so if there's any takeaways that we have from that, we're planning on sharing that. So if there's anything statewide that we can glean from that and share, we plan on doing that. I don't know that there'll be a whole lot, but if there are state pieces that we can share, we'll definitely do that.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Even state level data?
Even state level data. Yeah, there's no cut scores. There's no way for us to determine anything because it was a field test only, right? And so there really isn't data that, I mean, technically we could release item data and those types of things, but you wouldn't have the items to look at for it to make any sense anyway. And so, yeah.
Thank you.
Okay, so NSCAS Growth Spring operational. Interim results, like I said, should be within those 72 hours again. Summative results are based off of established cut scores from 2017 and 2018 respectively. So this spring, right, the existing cut scores on the NSCAS scale are what we're using to determine achievement levels for students. Okay, so this spring, the achievement levels that are established. The intention is this. So at the end of next year, of the fully operational year for NSCAS growth, for ELA, and this is pretty clear, and we shouldn't have any problems with that. This is that we should be doing standard setting for NSCAS growth ELA in summer of 2023. So we'll have a full year of implementation, summative results, and then we'll be able to, and that will be aligned, that the intention is that will be aligned to the new ELA standards, and that we would be able to do the cut score process in the summer. To Melanie's question, because we're setting that new cut score, we assume whatever decisions we make around science would be able to be carried over to ELA so that we have some consistency in naming of those achievement levels and how many and all of those types of things. That is the intention. It is also our intention to set standards for mathematics. Now, what I'll tell you is this is tenuous and for a couple of different reasons. So they're just starting the mathematics standard revision process. It would be better, I've looked at all of the different options. It would be better for all of us if we could just set standards alongside ELA at the same time next year for 2020 in the summer of 2023. That would be the best case scenario. What that would mean is that there would be limited revisions based on what we see from the mathematics standards revision process. And so if we see an early draft that indicates that there's not a lot of changes, we can proceed with this model that I'm putting out here before you that's on the screen. Because of the change in tests, because of the change in standards, it'd be nice if we could just get it done, do the new standard setting and the cut scores both in the summer of 23. If there appear to be significant changes in math, this won't be doable. And so there are a couple of other options available to us. None of them are great options, to be honest. At that point in time, if there's significant changes in the math standards, I'm not going to go through those. I don't think it does us any good to put those out there. If you want to talk about them because you're intellectually curious, that's great. I don't know that it'll do us a lot of good to put those other things out there and just confuse matters at this time. But this is our intention at this time, but it is based on the level of change of mathematics standards moving forward. Math is, like I said, just starting the process of standards revision. The intention is that those would be approved next fall in a similar time frame as ELA standards were updated. So we'll see kind of how that process rolls and how significant those changes are. Like I said, that to answer Melody's question, both math and ELA would then be able, when the next time we do that cut score process, that those definitions and those achievement levels would be able to be updated at that time. And whatever decisions that we make around science are likely to carry over to ELA and mathematics. And so as we're having those conversations and getting input from stakeholders, we'll be thinking about the changes we make in science, and that is what the intention of moving those same types of definitions and frameworks over to ELA and to mathematics as well, so that it's all consistent between those three content areas. Once again, those are content-based recommendations that come from educators that we bring in, and then up through the State Board of Education. And I can get into those processes more if you want, probably at a later time, to describe those.
Do you know if you'll be changing the descriptor levels for NSCAS ACT as well, so they flow up from 3 through 8?
Yeah, that is a good question. So once again, we'll be asking for feedback on that around ACT. ACT is a little bit different because of some of the definitions that ACT uses, and that's actually had impact on the previous set of achievement, or the current set of achievement descriptors that we are using in 3 through 8. I don't know if we're going to change those or not. I don't. One thing in general, I want to, the alignment piece for ELA and ACT going forward, there's a lot of questions I have around that. I'm going to be asking those stakeholders for feedback about what we should do and what we should look at. It's possible that it could impact ACT, but I don't know for sure. I'm likely to go with whatever recommendations come from our discussions from our stakeholder groups. I don't have a definite sense of the direction around ACT in the near future, to be honest. I think there's a pretty good argument to say, let it stay the way it is and go forward. I think there's also reasons to change it. I think there's reasons to maybe wait till the next time ACT updates some of their data makes sense as well. And so we'll be looking at any number of options around ACT moving forward. I don't have a definite sense of where we're going or what we should do at this time.
Do you think that since ELA and math is growth and science is more summative, will that play into the need for naming conventions? It
could, absolutely. I think that's part of the discussion as we look at science, and maybe it is different, right? Because they're very different models, and so yeah, it definitely could. In general, I hesitate to have them be too different, because I don't know that helps with explaining it to parents and other stakeholders and those types of things. So I think what I'll tell you is all of those things are on the table, and I'll be looking for some of you to give us really good feedback about what we should do going forward around those pieces, because I do think there is a consideration of naming them differently because of the differences between the models. Yeah.
And finally, are there 45 items in the ELA and math, both winter and spring operational? Do you anticipate the same number of items? Actually, I've asked. So what I would say is the winter pilot is a little bit light on items, to be honest. And so I've asked us to look at adding items for the spring. So I think it's going to possibly be a little bit longer to improve the data that we're getting back, to be more map growth-esque, to be honest. Okay. All right, thanks. Yep.
And Jeremy, can I ask a question in that regard?
Sure.
So again, in having the opportunity this Friday to learn a lot more on the winter side of things, we learned that, and again, just through the resources they sent that I could preview prior.
Sure. Yeah.
So we learned that there are 45 questions on both the ELA and the math, yep, and that 90 minutes is the recommendation for each test session. And so what you just said in terms of adding potential additional questions to the spring, that would then add time to the allotment of what kids are going to need to finish, correct?
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, thanks.
Yep. And what I'll tell you is anytime we give you estimates to start out with, is that they're very loose estimates, right? That it's really hard. test time, taking time is a very, and this is information that most of you know, right? Test time varies greatly by student. And so you get a wide variation. In general, in practice, when we make those recommendations, we're trying to get most kids. And so usually it's longer than most of the kids are going to take, right? But that's also based on estimates that we have and information we have. Sometimes that information is wrong. And sometimes it takes longer for students to engage, and sometimes it's much shorter, right? And so that's the best we have right now. As we get data and information comes in, we'll update the recommendations around scheduling as we go. So
I have one more question about scheduling, Jeremy. In the past, you've given a cutoff point where the student has spent already too much time.
yeah.
Is there going to be guidance around that? We don't want kids spending 6 hours on the test.
Right. And I agree with that completely. What I'd say for the winter pilot is use your best discretion. I don't have a point in mind. I will get something for you for spring to say, and that way there's some consistency around that cutoff point. But I'll get something for spring. But as far as winter goes, use your best judgment. If a student, what I'd say around that is take whatever freedom you need around winter based on how you're using the data, if that makes sense. So if you're counting on that data for whatever processes, then you want the most reliable data you need. So then make that decision. If you're doing both map growth and NSCAS growth and you're relying on it, map growth for information, and a student is sitting there and we need to get back to class, cut them off and get them back to class is what I'll tell you. There's a lot, you have a lot of discretion and freedom around the winter pilot. We want everybody to participate because we want everybody to experience this platform and to get in there and everything. But you have a lot of freedom around making the best decisions for districts, for schools, for students, for teachers, and for instruction. So take that freedom for as genuine in winter. We're trying to get feedback. We're trying to get good data, but we also want to be cognizant of the fact that we're asking potentially for additional testing this winter. But it's also important for us to get good data moving forward. So I'll say all those things and let you use your best judgment.
Will students get a score if they don't finish? In the past on NSCAS, they have.
Yeah, and NSCAS, when I believe that there's the same type of threshold. Once they have enough items to get a reliable score, I think it does produce that, but I'll have to check that. I don't know for that for sure.
And
Yes,
whether we would get a RIT score also.
And that might be impacted by the number of items that they have as well, right?
If they've answered enough items, they'll get a score, but the score won't generate until the end of the window.
If it's limited.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay, good. Thanks, Trudy.
Mhm.
Do we know how many items is enough?
Is it 10 again, Trudy, or do we know?
Yes.
Trudy, I just need to clarify what you said so I understand. Sorry. So what I think I heard you say is for any students who take the NSCAS in a normal manner and answer the normal amount of questions, get that score within 72 hours. But for students who answer limited items, it's not until the window closes.
That's what I'm
That
getting.
would make sense to me because so until a student submits a test, there's no generation of scores, right? So if a student only answers some and doesn't complete the test, we wouldn't be able to force the system to generate scores until the end of the window is typically how the system works. And so that makes sense to me the way you said it, Teresa. Yeah.
So
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
So Jeremy, I'm assuming then this will function differently than map growth, that when it gets to the end of the window and a student hasn't finished their test, it terminates the test.
Yeah, I would assume so, because we'll take whatever information we can, because some information is better than no information in our world. Yep.
Well, and I wonder, just as a suggestion, if you could
Yeah.
talk to NWEA about, like, if there'd be a way for an adult to go into the
And
system
then
and say,
enforce it.
this kid is done. Yeah.
And
'Cause they
force
know
the
that.
completion of the test. And that was an option that we used to have under DRC system. So let me see if that's something that we can do. I'm sure Trudy's probably already written it down, but force completion of tests, and if that's possible in the new system or not. What I wouldn't want is that to be a really common occurrence. I don't think anybody would, and I don't think it will be. So maybe if it's possible, that might be something we can do. So we'll look into it.
You could, if you're worried about that, you could set it up with only district level functionality.
Yeah. Well, and I doubt that. What I doubt is that it's probably, so I doubt that they could give anybody that functionality. It's probably something you have to request, but we could say that if it comes from the DAC to the help desk, then that's something they could just do, right? But once again, I don't know if it's even possible. I assume that there's some functionality there, but it
Jeremy.
depends on how hard it is and all of those types of things. But I'll look into it. So we're getting close here, so I'm not going to take a break, because I think we're close. So NSCAS and growth and non-required testers, right? So we only test specific students that meet certain requirements for state testing. We've identified those in the past for you, and we expect those students to test. Students that don't meet those criteria that still might be in your building, you've always had the ability to test those students if you want to for MAP growth. Moving forward, you have the ability to test any students in these grades that you want to. We will only be pulling the information for required testers. So if you have a student that is 45% in your district, right, and spends the rest of their time in a private school, you could test that student using NSCAS growth if you want to. You'll get the results back and all of those types of things. The student would be in your data. When we go to pull reporting and accountability information, we would exclude that data based on their FTE. So the intention here is that we're open to, since this is interim testing and we're essentially replacing MAP growth in grades 3 through 8, is to try to allow you to have the freedom to test the students that you want to test. That being said, there's still the specific criteria of meeting 51%, grade levels, and all of those types of things going forward. That might be very confusing to you. If you're worried about that, let me know. In general, the intention is to have that freedom for you to test interim the way you need to, and then we'll describe the summative information that we need.
Is this only for winter, or is it for both winter and spring?
It's both winter and spring. So this will be true for, unless I get overwhelming feedback from this year that says, don't do this anymore, it's causing more problems than it's solving, then this would be true for fall, winter, and spring. In general, this is a very small group of students in general, and it's not going to affect many of you very much, but it's there. So
How will NDE know if students are less than 0.51 FTE?
it is an advisor. So if it's not correct, then right. So we'll be pulling that information. There's still the same types of systems where you'll be able to look at validation reports and those types of things. So that is one of the potential downsides of this, right? Is that if the FTE is not in there correctly, we're going to pull whoever it is that fits the FTE, and you would have to get that corrected. If not, that's one of the most common errors we see is FTE errors. I don't know how many Maggie helps fix in a year, but it is one of the most common errors. So that is one of the potential downsides of this. Yep.
Will the achievement status and growth report be available for NSCAS growth?
Say that again?
Will the achievement status and growth report, ASG report, be available for NSCAS growth?
The information from it is, I don't know if that specific report is available in the same way.
Okay. So Teresa recommends administering MAP growth to all new students who move in after the school year has started. Would this be the case with NSCAS growth too? So you can have data even after the window is closed?
So the NSCAS growth will not be open outside of the windows. So I don't know if that would be available for students to do the same way.
Okay, and so it was clarified, I'm sorry, there is no ASG report for NSCAS
Right.
growth.
Okay. Yep. Okay, that's it. That was the last one. Except for questions, obviously. And so obviously there's still lots of things that we're solidifying. Things are getting closer all the time. A lot of information is coming out. The trainings are coming up on the 15th, 18th, and whatever the last one is, because I can't remember it now, around the winter pilot. What other questions do you have? You can come off mute or type it into chat. I will stay I'll stay around till noon technically. I might drop and fall asleep before then, but I'll stay till noon.
Jeremy, I just want to say thank you for the details. I need that information as I move forward with the training. And so I got to process my notes, but I am ready for Friday. And I have many questions you answered. Now I don't have to bother with that on Friday.
Okay.
Or bother you, whoever's doing the training. So thank you.
Yeah, I'm going to try to be there on this Friday to see what kind of questions we get. I don't know that I'll be able to attend all three of them, but I'll try to be there for the policy side of things as much as possible for Friday for sure.
I appreciate it. Thanks.
Yeah, not a problem. I hope that you feel like we move forward today instead of just
Yes.
regurgitating old information or anything like that. I felt like we were moving forward, but I know that you still have lots of questions and I get that. So I thank you for your patience and everything as far as moving forward. Other questions?
Okay, me again. So when you say timeline information tomorrow, is that like the embargoed, like when we'll have our reports, information, all of that?
Yeah, that as far as special report, yeah, and last year's results, I'm hoping to have something to you tomorrow. I'm waiting for Lane to confirm some information from this morning, and then I would be able to put out some new information and timelines around the release and the lifting of the embargo and everything. And so, yeah.
Okay, and special report includes demographics?
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah,
very good.
Yep.
Thank you.
Yep.
Jeremy, this is Kim at Westside. I apologize because I've emailed you this before, but then
Yeah,
an
you're
email
fine.
came out yesterday and I
Yep.
feel like it had conflicting information.
Yep.
I feel like you have said before that we would be provided with updated ISRs that were not by the student's first name. And then yesterday in the email that went out, it's like the ISRs are available. This is the final form, which I feel like is different than what you have said and emailed. And so I just wanted to clarify again, if we should still be expecting those in a different form, or if we're supposed to figure out how to deal with the first name issue.
Yep. I want to provide an answer to you. I saw your question this morning. I need to check on one thing. So I will provide clarification in an email to everybody tomorrow about that, whether those are final or not. Okay.
Can I ask it, has anything changed on the ISR itself?
The ISRs are exactly the same. Yeah. They're still sorted by first name and by last name. Yep. At this time. I don't know if that's going to change or not.
Question in the chat, should we completely discontinue the MAP assessment administration moving forward?
So I would, so the position that NDE has is that for grades 3 through 8 ELA and for math, for reading and for math, that we would consider map growth and NSCAS growth to be largely redundant. They're not identical, but there's a lot of the same data. I would not encourage people to test both tests, but I'm not in charge of your district. And if you want to do that, that is up to you moving forward. We've had some people talk about it. And once again, I get it because we haven't shown you this assessment. You haven't seen the results and everything. I would think that would be way too much testing for students, to be honest. That being said, in grades K through 2 or 9 through 12, if you want to be doing map growth, that is perfectly fine. We're actually paying for K through 2 and 9-10 for the next 3 years for map growth. So it is possible that you could be running map growth for certain grades and NSCAS growth for certain for other grades, for grades 3 through 8 ELA and mathematics going forward. We are not, the state is not planning on paying for map growth 3 through 8 next year. And so if you decide to do that, you'll be paying for that yourself. We're not going to provide this assessment and pay for map growth in addition to for grades 3 through 8. Once again, we think that's probably too much testing. The intention is for all of us to move there, but yeah, everybody makes their own decisions as far as districts and what other assessments they want to give, right? So I did see a question come through the chat about requirements for next year. So fall and spring are required for map growth is the intention, so that we get beginning of the year and end of the year. Right, so sorry, let me clarify. For 22-23, fall NSCAS growth and spring NSCAS growth are required. Winter will be optional. We think you're going to want to do that. There's lots of reasons besides just the data. It's student information that moves forward with the student, right? So when in NSCAS growth, once we get to spring, the results of the assessment will move forward and inform where a student starts in the fall, and then continue to do that to the winter and to the spring. So there's good reason to test in winter, but we're not going to require it is the position that we've taken. I don't think I'm going to change that, but you never know what'll happen because I can't predict everything. So.
Okay, so Heidi's asking about map growth for science.
Yeah, so the intention is that we would continue to support map growth for science in 3 through 8 as well. So if you want to do science, we're planning on doing that. I believe that is in the contract specs that I've seen. So I believe that's correct. And so map growth science would be optional for districts to use or not to use. Yeah, for clarity.
Thoughts on what the fall window will be in length and starting time?
I haven't really thought about it a whole lot yet. I would anticipate it being very, very similar to what the recommendation around map growth is.
Okay, and 3 years out for science like NSCAS or like map growth and NDE?
Yes, so that would be included in the 3-year, yeah.
Okay.
Any further than that, I can't predict, but yeah, the 3-year for the science would be correct.
Okay.
Yeah, Jeremy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
I'm sorry. Is there a state partner code for downloading the secure browser? Are you aware of one?
I assume there is.
Yes,
I haven't read that manual.
It's in that manual.
Yeah.
Is it in that manual? Okay.
Yeah.
I can say it, but I didn't know if it was like a secret password.
That's all right. Allison.
If it's in the manual, it's a public document. What is
Allison
it?
shared it.
NSCAS.
NSCAS. Oh man, that's super secret. Nobody would have ever figured
But
that out. No
there's a
hacker
secret
ever would have
handshake
got
that
that one.
You have to do a secret handshake with yourself.
Oh yeah.
Oh, thanks, guys. Okay, I'm sorry.
No,
Someone had a
Jeremy, I
question.
was
No,
just
that's
wondering,
great.
when you said the fall, well, I guess all 3 windows would be similar to map. Okay, that's fine for the start, but like map goes window to window to window to window. So I'm assuming that's not going to be the case.
It is not. So it will probably be, so what I would look at is the recommended window for map growth to kind of set that. That'll be something that we'll put in front of the advisory group here really quick. And so to try to make sure that you guys have that. What I would say is I would want that to be clear what the windows are before the beginning of 2022, so that you have that information for your calendars. And
Well, and some of that's been, for some districts, has been determined by the IRIP deadlines. And so that's why
we'll want to be thoughtful about that and all of those pieces. And we're going to have to consider rostering as well. And all of those pieces. It is the issue is way more complicated than just setting a couple of dates,
Right.
is what I'll tell you. So we'll be getting input, but I fully understand your need for that information and those windows to be sooner than later, so that you can plan for next year and have that information for your calendar. One good news piece is we do have the 2022-23 ACT dates already for you. Those will be available next week in this NSCAS ACT version. So those will be available. Those have already been determined. So, but clear that we need the NSCAS windows for fall, winter, and spring for next year.
There was a comment about the window being perhaps 5 weeks with one makeup, and the concern for the winter, since there's the holiday in between, that perhaps it's
Yeah, so the winter pilot is definitely shorter than it's tough. Let's put it that way, right? It is shorter than we anticipate or we would like. Part of that was to try to inform spring and the amount of time that we needed and those types of things. I don't want to say exactly what the window is. We did extend that window by a week when we were trying to listen and be responsive, but it does cut down on the amount of time that we had then to prep for spring and the amount of changes that we could incorporate. In general, yes, I agree and hear you on that for the winter. And so we'll be looking at that winter and if it makes sense to have that extended or not. Moving forward, there wasn't, for the pilot, it was based on other deadlines besides just what was needed, I guess. So we'll look at that window again. Let's put it that way. That was not the intention necessary to set next year's window by this year's window for the winter pilot. Let's put it that way.
And will the ACT dates for 22-23 be announced on Monday?
Yes, on Monday. Yep.
Jeremy, Katrina from Holdridge. One quick thing, my tech guy already did the app upload for our kiddos.
Yeah.
And it took at least a minute for it to load on kids' computers. So
Okay.
that's a concern. So just something to be ahead of. And also, I put it in the chat, but they both have NWEA as their logo on the apps. And so their only difference is color. And so for, our 3rd, 4th graders, that could get confusing because they're going to get into the wrong app.
You go to get the wrong app.
Yeah. So I don't know
Okay.
if that's something that can be changed. So it says NSCAS or it has something different on it so that kids are not going to get confused on which
Yeah.
app you're supposed to be using.
Yeah, thanks for that feedback, Katrina. We have NWA reps on, and they guarantee they heard that, and we'll take that back and see if there's anything we can do, right? So thank you for that feedback. Appreciate it.
Well, and on most districts or a lot of them where we push things out, the things are out on all iPads. So that means, like, for us, all our devices will have both of those logos existing.
Okay.
And we can't pick and choose by grade level which ones see it and which ones don't. So,
Okay.
or we can, but we don't because that's too time consuming.
Right. And that's understood, right? I didn't realize that. So we'll see what we can do, if there's anything we can do about it in the short term or not.
Our technology people are a little bit concerned about having the app on both of them on Chromebooks too. And the names are a little different, but I'm sure we're going to get people that click on the wrong one.
And then we're getting questions.
Only the name underneath it, but the logo itself, both. I mean,
Right.
when you're looking at an app.
There's no logo on the Chromebooks. It's in the
Oh, gotcha.
kiosk. But the names are different. But
Okay.
I still think people are going to
You're
click
gonna
on the
click
wrong
on the wrong
one.
one. Yeah,
And
absolutely.
so like any kind of guidance you can provide about like
Which is the right one. or-
helping to check students to check
Okay.
to make sure they've launched the right thing. If there's something that looks different when they open it. I get that the test ticket won't work, but we don't want
We don't want them to do that and then have to
it to
fix
be
Yeah.
all the way
We want 'em to
down
be right the
there
first time, yeah.
before we figure
Yeah.
out it's wrong. So
Yeah.
like if we could provide pictures that we can share with teachers that this looks this way and this looks this
Yeah.
way, that would be a really big.
Yeah.
The name of the app is NWEA State Solutions
Mm.
for growth.
As opposed to that makes
Is it
sense
different
that it would be
colors?
named that way.
There is
That is
no
understood.
color.
You're right, because
Oh,
them
there is
launching
no
the
color.
wrong
Yeah.
program and then trying to get it is just not something we want. It'll slow everything down and make it inefficient.
Right.
I'm not
And the
sure
ti-
what can be done in the short term, but that's great feedback to start out with. Yes.
The ticket won't work, but like to the extent that we can make the error messages really clear, so it says you've launched the wrong system.
That way they're not contacting you or
Right.
customer service or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or if we can have like, this is what the screen should display.
Should
for the
look like when it
student.
opens up,
Yeah,
so you
some
can
of
check
that
it.
would,
And
I think,
that
help.
should be doable at the very least, right? So that's what I'll tell you is at least some clarification is doable. I don't know if renaming anything or relogoing anything is doable in the short term. What is doable is some clarification on how to try to make sure they get the right one to begin with. So that at the very least we will provide.
And we can't delete one because we need both
Right.
of them for, different
Yep,
grade levels.
understood. Yep. Other things. And what I'll say, in general, any of this feedback, start sending it in. If you have concerns, thoughts, whatever it is, let us know now. If things that we can fix, we will. Things that we can't in the short term, we'll try to fix longer term. And try to be responsive to whatever it is in this case. I think, like I said, there's things that are doable, right? And maybe things that aren't, but we'll try to assist and make things better as soon as we can.
Okay,
So
So-
other questions?
Jeremy,
if I,
oh, go ahead.
I'm sorry, if I could just say that there are screenshots that will be in the manuals and also in the tutorials.
Okay.
Okay.
But we'll also look at pointing you to those two, if there's simpler ways to do that or clarifying ways to do that.
Right.
Yep. Thank you, Trudy.
So Jeremy, since there's actually like 55 minutes left, I won't feel bad asking this question, but I'm gonna apologize to Maggie because I've been going back and forth with her on this already.
Yeah.
But way back toward the beginning when it was discussed about the ability to download the file and upload the accommodations out of the system, that would only be available at the district level because of sensitive information. Okay, and you know what my issue is with that data file that was shared out. So I see, and this maybe will be addressed on Friday, but I got to take a peek at the user guide for the new one, and I don't see it clear enough to satisfy me where it says under score reports who will get that data file. I feel
Okay.
like if it's considered a
we should
score
clarify.
report, I don't, right now, score reports are shared all the way down to, through instructor. And so what I would love is under score report for there be another box that says district data file and only a check mark underneath one of those district roles. And then let districts decide if they share it further on down.
Okay.
I really feel strongly about this, so I'm probably not gonna let it go until I.
No, and that makes it, I was late getting my feedback back into that chart, to be honest, because I was sick. And
Yeah.
the first thing I said is, who has access to this data?
Yeah.
And let's be sure that's very clear. So that we'll try to clarify that so that you feel comfortable.
Okay.
Yeah,
I didn't think that was the right meeting for
Yeah,
that. but-
and that's the intention of all of the roles is specifically that, so you can try to make sure only the people that are supposed to have information have it. And if we need to fix it, then let's fix it and get it done and or clarify. Absolutely. I agree 100%.
Hang on, sorry. Okay, hey, Jeremy, this is Teresa again, sorry.
Yeah, no problem.
Jeff Uckman is in here with me, and
Yeah.
he had loaded the, Jeff, can you just say what you said? And we're a little concerned about the Chromebooks.
The Chromebooks in kiosk mode are only going to show a name. They're not going to show anything else. And the only deviation you've got in the name is very minute after the first word.
Yeah, so we just talked about this. We're going to see if we can identify some clarification for everybody, or if we can make some changes to that in the short term. So, but we'll try to provide some clarification to make sure that we're getting the right one too. So we are working on that. Thanks for
Okay.
the input. I
Thank you.
appreciate it. Yeah, those are things that I would not know in my position that are difficult. So great, I appreciate it. Okay. I wore you guys out again, I see. If you have input, if you have questions, let us know. Lots of stuff coming up. Obviously, I know we're keeping you very busy on the assessment front. I'm sorry if for those of you that are wearing so many hats, which is just about everybody, I think anyway. So if you need something from us, please let us know. I am working to catch up on all those emails and to give as much information as we can, as quickly as we can. So thank you for your time today. I won't tell anybody if you take a quick nap under your desk or anything. You should probably stop the recording, Stacy. So that's not that's bad. That was on recorded. Okay, never mind. I was joking.
For the person who asked about alternate assessment paper pencil, you will do that through Insight.
Yeah, through DRC system. Yep.
They can get the that test through Insight, but
They print
don't
them.
they identify it through the profile? Or
If they're
in their
paper
student
pencil
assessment?
versus online,
No, whether they're alternate or not is
Yeah.
done.
that is alternate
paper
assessment
pencil.
students are identified with the alternate assessment field in their SPED record in
Yes.
Advisor.
Yes, okay, that's what I thought, but I just
Yep.
want to make sure.
That stuff hasn't changed. Yep.
Jeremy, I'm not sure if this is Cecilia with Ralston. I'm
Yeah.
not sure if we have like a weird question that isn't applying to anybody else, so I didn't want to ask in front of everybody. But
Everybody has weird questions. Cecilia. Everybody does. Everybody thinks they're unique too. They're like, this is the weirdest thing you'll ever see. And I'm like, yeah, I dealt with that twice yesterday. It's amazing. It is absolutely amazing. So don't worry about it. Go ahead.
All right, well, thank you. Well, we have been trying to download the app onto our Apple devices, and it's telling us we can't have the map growth simultaneous to it.
Well, that would be a problem.
Yeah. So are we doing something wrong, or
I
is
have
there...
no idea. The best advice I can give you is to call NWA customer service and tell them, and they should be able to help you figure it out. And if it's something that is not allowed, then we better fix it right away. So that would be great if you do that. That concerns me greatly. So I hope that it's something that you're doing wrong and not something that's wrong for everybody. But we'll get it fixed if that's the case. Yeah.
Okay.
Cecilia,
Yeah.
You want the
that just spurred because we haven't tried downloading it. We were getting ready to do that. We'll have the same issue. Are you having it pushed out to devices like from Essential, or is each device is downloading?
No, I think we have to do it. I think we have to touch each device, is my understanding from our tech department. There's something about that we can't, but I apologize. I can't remember the why behind it.
Okay.
So they are, and it's our apples that we're having the issue with. I don't know if we just haven't navigated the other yet, but that's what I know so far.
Yeah, I would have probably one of your tech people reach out to the NWA customer service. We can, Maggie put the phone number in there. So if you want to have one of them call, or you can email to, either way, they should be able to help you.
That's
We're all iPads, so I'll let you know if it's an issue. I'll let you know here soon.
I don't want to
Sounds good.
know.
We'll
The-
reach
the
out.
Customer service should be taking care of you. That's what I'll tell you. And if it's a bigger problem, they'll let me know as well, so that you don't ever have to worry about that. They do a good job of, when we need to be concerned, they do a pretty good job of letting me know.
Okay, sounds great. I'm gonna
Yeah.
hope it's just user error on our part.
I hope so too, because you know what? But we have plenty of time, and we'll, if not, we'll get it fixed right away. So
Sounds great. Thanks, Jeremy.
yeah, thank you. Appreciate it. Okay, everybody, I'm going to kick the rest of you out. Thanks. We'll see you later.